All right, welcome back to the PCC podcast. And today we are going to cover fat loss plateaus. Are you actually at a plateau? What that is, how you can move past it. And this topic was actually inspired by me hitting my own plateau. So, if you guys didn't know, I have been locked in for honestly, probably better part of 6 months. It's May now, or it's the end of April now. And at the beginning of November, I decided I'd had enough of my own shit and I was going to lock in on my nutrition, my steps, my training. And I've been pretty modest with everything. Like, I'm only training 3 days per week. For me, for a fitness coach, that's not as much as I could or would. But for a lifestyle client, of course, 3 times a week is amazing. But only training 3 times a week for me is a little bit less. I haven't been in a super big calorie deficit, and I've slowly lost 5 to 7 pounds of body fat over the course of the past 5, 6 months. Now, you might be thinking that's so slow, and you're exactly right. I have not been working towards aggressive fat loss up to this point. I've been working on what's called body recomposition, which is building muscle and losing fat at the same time. If you guys don't remember, I trained for a marathon through most of 2025. And in that process, I truly believe I lost a decent bit of muscle mass. I was pretty detrained by the end of that prep, especially because I had some injuries with my knees and my glutes that I wasn't able to strength train the way that I really wanted to through a lot of that prep. So, with that being said, that has nothing to do with plateaus. So let's dive back in. I'm at a plateau now where I have been lowering my calories a little bit more. I've been getting into a little bit more of a real calorie deficit, aiming for fat loss. And my goal is to lose about 10 pounds of body fat by August 13th. And so right now it's the end of April. So May, June, July, and maybe 1.5 weeks into August. So I have about 12 to 14 weeks until that deadline. And I've hit a point right now to where I've been hitting my calories and macros every single day. And my scale weight has been completely stagnant at the 140 mark. Every now and again, it'll dip into the high 139s. But other than that, it has been a straight line for the past 2.5 months. And so over the course of this time, I have been working on pulling the levers to make sure that I'm really at a plateau before I drop my calories down again, because that's the last resort with what you want to do. And that's what most people tend to do first, is just cut calories, cut calories, cut calories. And then you end up in a situation where your calories are so low that you can barely even sustain them. You can't even stick to it. And then your consistency goes all over the place. And so I'm going to explain to you guys here what is a plateau, and then how do you actually go about breaking it, and why have I taken the path that I have, and what are my next steps, and what do I recommend that you do if you're also at a plateau. And so the biggest thing that is really important to debunk is that most of you who are listening to this who think that you're at a plateau, I'm going to be totally frank with you, are not. You are not at a plateau. You are missing education and knowledge and consistency with enough of the right things that your progress isn't moving, even though you're putting in effort, because that effort is not directed appropriately. And that's where 99% of our clients are. They think they're at this crazy plateau. They think their body's revolting against them. They think that they just need to crash diet in order to see any sorts of results. When in reality, it has a lot more to do with the fact that what you have been trained to learn from diet culture, from whatever history of tracking calories or losing weight that you've done in the past, is not a reliable thing. It is not actually evidence-based. It's not actually science-based. So let's kind of zoom out and look at a plateau. So a plateau in fat loss is a situation where your metabolism has completely adapted to the calories in and out balance that you are at. And so one thing that continues to reign supreme is the principle of thermodynamics, calories in versus calories out. That is a science-backed, evidence-based thing that cannot be avoided. And every single fat loss strategy that you have seen work in your life has worked because it applies that concept. Whether it was through cutting out the carbs in keto, that cut out not only carbs, but the calories from those carbs that created a calorie deficit for you, because protein and fat on their own are very satiating. So it was hard for you to probably be in a calorie surplus when you were eating in that style of eating. If you had some sort of meal plan or food rules that you would follow to lose weight, well, the reason why you lost weight was because those food rules made it easier for you to create a calorie deficit. So whether that's intermittent fasting, following a meal plan, typically most weight loss approaches have some sort of either time restricted window where it's hard for you to get a ton of calories in that time frame, or rules around food processing or food quality or types of foods that just encourage you to eat more protein, fruits, vegetables, and less processed food that is hypercaloric. So, with that being said, metabolic adaptation is the process by which your metabolism adapts to the calories in that you are eating. So, over the course of time, if I'm going to use myself as an example. If I'm eating 2,000 calories per day, my metabolism will adapt to that slowly over time. Not immediately, but over weeks and months of consistently eating at that amount, my metabolism will adapt. And how it adapts in a positive manner is if I were to build muscle through that time and my metabolism could get stronger and actually burn more calories per day, or adapting down. If I cut those calories to 1,500, the gap between when I cut the calories from 2,000 to 1,500, where my metabolism has not yet fully adapted, which honestly, 500 calories is a lot. That could be months of time before my metabolism adapts. But in that gap, my metabolism is going to slowly get a little bit more and more efficient with those 1,500 calories. It's going to find corners to cut, shortcuts to take in order to survive off of those 1,500 calories. And so when you hear about, and this is not me condoning this or supporting this, but when you hear about women who don't eat a lot or women in sports who lose their periods through times of heavy training and exercise, is because your period is one thing that your survival instincts in your body will eventually flip off and say, well, we need to survive. So this period, this monthly cycle thing, it takes a lot of energy to shed the uterine lining. So we're going to pause that right now because we're not getting enough fuel or energy to support that process. And so that's a reason that happens at really extreme circumstances. For some women, it happens earlier than for others. Personally, I've never really struggled with losing my period, even at very, very extreme dieting situations, but other women are a little more sensitive to that. And so with that being said, my metabolism has adapted to the calories that I have been eating. Now, calories out is still an applicable concept too. So this is where things like step count come in as just a proxy for how much do we move throughout the day. And then our strength training and our exercise outside of just our day-to-day life, right? And so those contribute to calories out. And the balance between what you're eating and what you're expending is your energy balance. And metabolic adaptation occurs with both of those things. Not only can your body just get more efficient with the fuel that's coming in, it can also learn to burn less calories from the exercise that you're doing. So if I do 30 minutes of cardio a day, then what will happen is at first, you think about like the first time you run in like 6 months, you're huffing and puffing, you're sucking air, right? But then if you keep running every single day for 30 minutes, it eventually becomes easier and easier and easier. That's your system adapting, right? And that's a good thing for like endurance sports and things like that. But for fat loss, it's not so great because then your body gets more efficient at the same intensity of exercise to where you will have to continue increasing the intensity or the duration of the cardio that you're doing, which is why, on a side tangent, doing cardio to lose fat is not a really great strategy. So with that being said, a plateau is when you've been consistent with the intake and the output at a consistent level that should be a calorie deficit, and you've been consistent with that for at least 2 to 3 weeks straight of 90+% consistency, meaning calories are hit 90+% of the time. Steps are hit 90+% of the time. Workouts are hit 90+% of the time. Not perfection. You can have little errors here and there, but consistency is key. And the hardest part about a plateau, which is why most people that I talk to are never actually at one, is because the head games, the head games are so hard for people to go through. Meaning, when they're trying to see, am I at a plateau? And they're hitting their calories, hitting their steps, and then the scale just kind of stays the same or it even spikes up. Sometimes people's relationship with the scale can be so triggering that that's what pulls them off track. And they say, oh, this must not be working, screw it. When really what they need is a little bit more patience to just have the trend line show, right? 2 to 3 weeks of daily or near daily weigh-ins to see, is the trend line trending down, up, or staying the same? And that's agonizing. No one likes doing that. It's like watching paint dry. And like my issue with myself is that I can be a little too patient. I'm like the opposite of most of my clients at this point because of the relationship with data that I have. It's like, oh, we'll see. If I just stick it out for one more week, right? Maybe I'll hit a new low. And so I did that for like 2 something months. And I am truly at a plateau. And so then from there, the next step is to break that plateau. And how I like for you guys to look at this is there's a checklist of different levers that you can pull. Or if you look at like a control panel and there's like a bunch of different switches, you can choose to pull each of these levers. But what you don't want to do is pull all of them at once because number one, that's an unnecessary amount of change because we want to always make the smallest amount of change possible to see the maximum change in results. But at the same time, we also want to know what causes what, right? So if I change the calories and I change them on their own, then I can see the independent effect of the calories on energy balance and my results. And so this is where it's like you want to think about being a scientist with your body, right? This is all about isolating experiments. And so when you think about in like science class, when you were conducting a scientific experiment, you wanted to test one variable against the control, right? And that's what we're doing here. So when I change my calories, I don't also want to change my cardio and my strength training and my steps altogether because then I don't really know what's actually making the difference. And so how to break the plateau? Here's the checklist of all the things that you could change and what kinds of changes to make. So first and foremost, I'm going to kind of go through this as if you're someone who, if you're listening to this, who has not pulled all of these levers. Because the reality is before you go slash your calories, there's probably 10 other things that you can do to actually see better results in fat loss before you do that. So before cutting calories, I would look at your protein intake first. Is your protein intake 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound of lean body mass, aka your target body weight, right? So if you're 200 pounds trying to be 150, this is not 200 grams of protein. This is like 125 to 140 grams of protein, right? Or maybe up to 150. But protein, are you getting good quality protein in all of your meals and totaling up to that amount? Because if you are not, you are leaving so much on the table in terms of fostering muscle growth and retention, which is what the main driver of your metabolic rate is. And in addition, satiety. Eating protein keeps you full between meals, makes it easier for you to eat less calories. And protein has a high thermic effect of food, meaning you burn calories eating protein more than any other food group. Almost 30 to 40% of lean protein sources, especially whole food-based ones, are burned off in the process of eating protein. And that's not to say don't count the calories. It just means that there's much less net calories in from the protein that you eat. And so just keeping the calories the same and doubling your protein intake, if you're eating 60 grams a day and taking that up to 120, could potentially make a meaningful difference in the actual energy balance of calories in versus calories out for you. Second thing would be same for fiber. Okay, foods high in fiber. So are we getting 25 to 35 grams of fiber per day for women and 30 to 40 grams of fiber per day for men? And if you're not, what is this going to do, right? First of all, foods that are high in fiber are satiating, filling, and nutrient dense. So your energy is going to be better. Your digestion is going to be better. You're going to be fuller between meals. Again, thermic effect of food is higher. The body can't digest certain types of fiber. So those are calories that are not put into that net equation of calories in, calories out. So again, less calories actually absorbed, even if what you tracked is, 1,500 calories. And then digestion, it can help your digestion. When you're backed up, guess what? The scale's going to spike up because that's poop that you're holding in your colon that hasn't come out yet, that holds weight on the scale, right? Um, and then nutrient dense food as a whole, anything outside of protein and fiber, single ingredient, nutrient dense food, healthy fats, complex carbohydrates. The more single ingredient whole foods that we eat, the more accurate our calorie count actually is. It's never going to be perfect, but it'll be more accurate because labels round by 20%, eating out rounds by is off by even more, right? Because we're just estimating. But also the thermic effect of food is higher for nutrient dense single ingredient foods. So before you even touch calories, just audit your food quality and your macronutrient composition. Then we have our steps. Okay. So how many steps are you getting per day? Get a wearable, have your steps be tracked per day. Start to keep an eye on this, right? Because if you're walking less than 5,000 steps per day, you are classified as a sedentary person. If you are between 5,000 to 7,500 steps per day, that's much better, but you could get a lot more energy expenditure out of raising your steps above 7,500 per day, above 10,000 per day. And it's not necessarily, cardio, but it's increasing expenditure and getting you moving throughout the day, right? And that can make a huge difference in energy expenditure because our non-exercise activity, NEAT, steps included in that, is one of the largest and most movable components of your energy expenditure. It could be up to 15 to 20% of your energy expenditure. And it really can make a difference in your calories out. Strength training, okay? When it comes to seeing a massive transformation, if we are not strength training, not only regularly, but intensely, actually pushing yourself, actually getting close to failure, actually being smart about it, then we are leaving a lot of potential metabolic gains on the table. Again, what we talked about, metabolic adaptation, your metabolism adapting to the calories you're eating. You know what prevents that from happening as much is having more muscle mass, and you get more muscle mass from strength training. Then we have sleep and stress. So these are not as direct, but indirect. So sleep and stress together, for example, can impact how your body digests food. What state your body is in when it digests food. Is your body in a stressed state? Is your body in a sleep deprived state? And that can actually downstream affect things like hormones that make it more probable that you're going to store some calories as body fat versus just using them as energy. It can affect things like insulin sensitivity and resistance when you get poor sleep or you stay very stressed. And so energy balance is still king. If you're in a calorie deficit, you will still lose mass from your body. However, sleep and stress being off can dictate whether or not the weight that is lost comes from fat or muscle. So something to keep in mind there. And then water intake. Are we drinking at least half of our body weight in ounces of water per day, if not much more? Because water intake helps with digestion, bowel movements, mental clarity, absorbing the nutrients from our calories, and keeping the body flushed from excess inflammation and stress, etc. Okay, so all of those, and then we have cardio as a last option. It's not as much as a needle mover as we think. It is honestly my last option for someone in a fat loss phase. I tend to prefer, either bringing steps up or calories down or a combination of both rather than just adding cardio. But for some people, having something like a high intensity cardio session or a little bit of steady state can actually be a really great thing for cardiovascular outcomes and how fuel is utilized in a fat loss phase. So with that being said, all those things before we touch calories, okay, then I would say if you're doing all those things, then calories, steps, cardio are your main levers. From there, I would make a 10% adjustment, meaning if I'm eating 1,500 calories, the maximum number of calories I'm going to drop is 150 from that amount. And I could also make a small adjustment to my steps, maybe adding 1,000 per day. If I'm walking 8,000 steps per day, then walking 9,000 steps per day can be a significant improvement that adds to the calorie deficit and energy balance. And then from there, you're going to want to be consistent with that change for 2 to 3 minimum weeks of hitting all of those targets, 90% consistently or more. And then, and then weighing in near daily, if not daily, and looking at the trend line of, are we seeing the average weight from each 7-day period decrease, or is it stagnant? And the key here is that real fat loss takes patience and data iteration. And that is the cold, hard truth. If you've lost weight before without this, it's definitely possible, but it tends to take more extremes and more effort to do so in a non-data oriented way, because you're pulling levers without knowing. And in order to see more progress, you're not taking a scientific approach that allows you to make the minimum effective change. Okay. So it's not impossible to make up a bunch of other rules and lose fat, but there's nothing that's going to teach you truly how your body actually works compared to being a scientist with yourself, actually seeing the cause and effect of the changes that you make with the consistency over time. And honestly, the hardest part is the consistency. And I will say this myself, at my plateau right now, what did I do? What was the next step that I took? Because I was dragging my feet on making a change and reducing my calories. And what I did was I hired a coach. I literally, as the day I'm recording this, April 28th, 2026, yesterday, I signed a contract and jumped in with my fitness coach, Cody, who is one of the top coaching companies in the industry and one of very few people that I look up to in this industry. And I'm going to be having the accountability. I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I am giving myself the support for when it gets hard, because I know that when my calories get below this point, I'm going to start to want to make excuses. I'm going to want to throw in the towel when it gets hard just because I'm tired or I don't feel like it. And that's not a good enough reason to not see what's on the other side. And so I needed to have a little bit more preventative support for myself rather than, and here's what I was really thinking was, I don't want to get to July 1st, have a month left and not be where I want to be. Right. And so I'm being proactive and setting myself up for success ahead of time, because that's what high performers do. We don't wait until it's too late and then we're disappointed in ourselves and we lost self-trust. We just get the support when we know that this is a season that we want to change, we want to level up and make the changes with the support so we don't have to second guess it. So the next episode is going to be all about how to heal your relationship with tracking macros, because if you couldn't tell from this entire episode, data is important. And if you don't have a healthy relationship with data, then you're not going to be able to implement any of the steps that I just put here. So stay tuned for that episode and let me know if you have any questions. Send me a message on Instagram. And I'm so excited to hear feedback from this episode. This is a topic that I love. So hopefully you guys use this to break your next fat loss plateau, or just come to us if you're ready to step into the support and the guidance that's actually going to get you to your goals in the most efficient way possible. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you back here for the next episode next week.